Braking to go faster? Yep, that's right. What I'm really talking about here is trying to improve your braking technique, to smooth it out, find more grip on the trail, and that could make you faster. I think braking well is one of those skills that just improves the more time you spend on the bike, and it becomes less of a conscious thing. Well, I think it does for me anyway. Trying to learn how much grip you've got on that day of your ride is going to help you brake better and be faster. So sometimes maybe I've not ridden for a couple of weeks, I jump on my bike and I realise I'm going a lot slower than I could be because I'm nowhere near the actual level of grip, not getting to the edge of it at all. So what I try and do is try and exaggerate the corners a little bit, maybe use a little bit too much brake, tiny little skids here and there. That will give you a really good judgment of how much grip there is on that trail. Again, that'll start becoming unconscious once you've got a feel for it, and then you can start thinking about nailing your lines and getting the most out of your brakes. Another mistake is to pump the levers over and over. This is really a case of misjudging my speed and grip. It's super frustrating, but if I relax and ride more, it will soon disappear. Or the safety brake. This is when you're dragging your brake when you really don't need to be. More about that later. Proper braking at the right moment could also mean you're actually braking harder, but for less time. Think about it in Formula 1 terms, where they brake hard, then they brake late, and they come off the brakes to find maximum grip in the corners, and therefore speed. How does that translate to mountain bike riding? Well, let's look at corner entry. To be as fast as possible through downhill corners, try and do exactly that. Brake hard, brake late, come off the brakes, try and get around that corner. But are you doing that? Pick yourself a corner like this where there's a load of hard braking before it, do it over and over again and see if you can nail it. You'll get a good feel of which attempts are good and fast. It should feel smooth, and you should have really hit the edge of your limits of grip. Smooth, hard braking and no pumping of the levers with no big slides. Can you actually get away without braking in a section? Of course, brakes feel like the ultimate safety net, and they are a lot of the times, but you might be able to ride through that section just a little bit faster if you dare yourself to do it. Going full death grip means taking your fingers off the brake levers and just gripping onto the bars. To be honest, I maybe used to do that in the old downhill racing days a little bit, but not anymore. Nowadays, I'd much rather leave my fingers on the levers and just dare myself not to pull them. Steep downhills are the time where you're going to be braking the hardest, and grip is going to make a big difference to how fast, but also how confident you feel on those steep downhills. So a tyre with big knobbies that are really going to dig into the ground are going to make a big difference. And how good are your brakes? Not all brakes are created equal. Of course, the fastest way to ride down a steep downhill is to come off the brakes as soon as you can, but it's going to be scary and you've got to be confident you're going to make it. Dialing in your brake setup to suit you personally is also going to make a big difference to how well you can use them and how powerful they are. So not everyone's going to like mine, but the way I like to do it is have my lever adjusted right in, so on that reach adjustment in there, almost all the way in, so it's really close to the bar. My one finger goes right at the very end, so actually you can see when I'm pulling it all the way on, it's almost touching the bar. But for me that feels really powerful because it's almost a closed grip and I'm really trying to get the most out of my brakes. I also like to adjust that free stroke to the minimum so that my lever doesn't move very much. Some people say that might be less modulation because there's literally less stroke on there to determine how hard your brakes are working. But what I like to do is be able to get those pads touching that disc as soon as possible and then do the modulation myself. The harder I pull on that brake, the harder it's going to stop me. Again, it's all about dialing in your brakes to your personal preference, but making sure they're working as soon as you need them. Good braking technique does take a little bit of practice and I think a bit of thought, but then hopefully it'll become natural and you forget about it. Just definitely think a little bit about setting up your brakes and making sure they're working properly. If you want to see some tips on wet riding, click over there for that one. If you want to see some tips on how to ride steep downhills, over there, hit that subscribe button if you haven't done already. Hopefully you have, and give us a thumbs up.